Hey, welcome to the Spectre Creative Channel. My name's Scott Toy Guru Neitlich. I'm a longtime veteran of the toy industry, and I'm also an adult collector. And I started this channel to try to clarify a lot of questions people have about toys. Well, I have some good news and some bad news, because there's some things I can talk about and some things I can't talk about. One of the questions that get asked all the time is, what is the production number? How many units of an action figure are actually made? Well, here's sort of the bad news. I can't give out numbers for a specific toy. But, well, it's proprietary information because companies use that to get advantages in the market. But what we can do is we can sort of reverse engineer into this by looking at different factors, such as toy manufacturers in China, which have what's called an MOQ, minimum order quantity, meaning if you don't order that set amount, well, usually between 5 to 10,000 units, and that's public knowledge because you can call these factories and ask, they won't even turn the light on without an order for 5 to 10,000 units. So what if you want less than 5 to 10,000 units? Let's start off with that. Well, first off, then you're looking at what's called premium pricing. A vendor, if they like you and they have a long-standing relationship, might be willing to make fewer toys than the MOQ, and this is what happens with Comic-Con items all the time when you see them at very low runs. That's also why they have high prices, because the price that the vendor charges is passed along to the consumer. And that is how MOQ works for low-run items. Every item, for example, sold on Matty Collector was below, way below the MOQ. That's why an action figure like Roboto here costs $20 when his corresponding figures at retail at the time were like $10, which I know is kind of shocking because now we're talking like $25 to $30 for the equivalent of a 6-inch figure. All right, so with premium pricing in the can, what about how many actual action figures are made? Well, sometimes we're lucky enough that it's plastered right on the front of the blister with this crazy, insane silver Wolverine at 25,000 units. And the way we can do this is looking at the number of doors in the US. So by doors, I mean how many actual Target stores, how many actual Walmart stores are there? And between Target and Walmart, there's roughly 6,000 of them, give or take. So if each store takes 2 case packs, we're talking 12,000 units. And hey, that's great. Thanks to big box stores, we are now above the MOQ. If we call and ask for 12,000 units, factory's going to say, yay. Okay, but what about all those online sellers, right? They have a piece of the puzzle too. And as adult collectors, we often are patronizing these stores because they have different offerings like mint on card shipping, etc., etc. Well, altogether, we're probably talking maybe, on a good day, another 2,000 units. And by good day, I mean something like, Mandalorian or, a really hot character that collectors are going to want to get. And believe me, that's rare. Most figures that are out there are not that hot, and these retailers are very concerned with ordering too many, winding up with stock that just costs them storage space. All right, and then of course you've got to look at Amazon, right? You were saying, well, what about Amazon? Well, Amazon basically, if you took all of the, the smaller ones and put them together, maybe they're close to Amazon. Let's say Amazon orders another 2,000. And again, we're rounding up here, like way rounding up. So we're at about 16,000 units of an actual figure. But hey, I'm feeling generous today. Let's round up even further just for funsies, okay? So let's say, much like good old Silver Wolverine, which I know all of you have and cherish, let's say there's 25,000 units. This is actually why, during the debate I did with Retroblasting on Toy Geeks, that I specifically challenged Retroblasting about their claim that there were 100,000 fans out there that specifically wanted the Rise of Evil 2-pack. I knew from my experience there was no way this was true because, again, on a good day, 25,000. Now, sometimes you get an exception. When Power of the Force 2 launched, they were doing about 200,000 units per figure, but that is by far the exception. That was all the pent-up demand of 10 years of no Star Wars on the shelf. That doesn't happen every day. Every day you have to sort of have a very different perspective, because unless you have a major event, yeah, even that 25,000 is a big number. And again, that's like a really good day. I mean, all right. Let's look at some other examples to compare action figure sales versus the rest of the toy industry. That's probably actually going to give the best comparison. So categories like outdoor toys, everything from hula hoops to wheelbarrows and tricycles, all of that stuff, as well as preschool toys. This is like by far the vast majority of toy sales. It dwarfs every other category. And toys in these categories, we're selling in the hundreds of thousands of units versus 25,000. Now, looking at the U.S. population, and this is also how we'll back into these numbers, so U.S. population's around 335 million. For children, we're talking about 50 million out of that 335 million. So you've got 50 million children out there, and if anyone has had a child, like I know I sure have, you know that having a baby and a new child is, well, a big, I wouldn't call stressor, but whoa, it blows your mind. And you want to give that child everything that you can. You want to give them toys that are going to help them grow and nurture, but toys are also a great way to distract them and get 5 minutes of breathing time. And that's why a lot of parents buy preschool toys. Now, as a toy company, you're going to have very limited resources, right? They're not infinite. And you have to figure out a way to put these resources to what's going to make the most money. So when you have things like Hasbro canceling a whole bunch of pre-order collector product, it's simply because the resources have to be allocated towards categories that are actually going to make the stockholders profit. Because a company can't just afford to throw away money into categories that are very small. It doesn't make any business sense. And things like, say, Stranger Things action figures, which are more or less an R-rated figure. I mean, I know Netflix has an R rating, but if this was a movie, it would be R-rated, right? You're going to have a very limited audience when you have things like this. All right, so then why even bother making action figures for collectors? Why even have an adult collector market, right? If it's so small. If the toy makers are looking at adult collectors and thinking you're not worth it, why are they producing these things? Well, it's because we give them free PR. We do reviews, and stores can build these end caps around them that draw people into the aisle. They're basically billboards for IP and for movies. And action figures based on movies are going to have a higher run, higher than that 25,000. When you have a hit movie, the main character is going to be at about 100 to 200,000 units. But we're talking a major movie with kid interest. All right, so the last thing to review when we're looking at understanding how to figure out toy quotas is that whole 80-20% rule that I'm always preaching on this channel, about how 80% of toy sales are to kids. So if we know that collectors make up that extra 20% and call it the gravy, if you will, on top of the bulk of sales, so if we know, or from all of this math we've just been through, that give or take, an action figure is going to get about 25,000 units made between everyone, between the big box stores that handle the bulk of sales, online and mom and pop stores, and then, finally your big online stores like Amazon. So knowing that the 80-20% rule, and believe me, this is still valid, it's not old math, so you're talking 5,000 collectors. That's pretty much about right about what an action figure is going to sell to the adult community. The other 20,000 are going to kids and gift givers. So looking at this compared to MOQ, well, at 5,000 units, while there are some vendors that will turn the machines on for 5K, they're really mostly at 10K. So that means collectors alone are not enough to support a minimum order quantity, which is why collector product at low quantity gets priced higher and put on that back wall behind electronics. There simply aren't enough collectors to justify going into production on a figure that hangs in the main retail aisle. You're not going to get to that 25,000. Now, you might say, well, okay, why not produce more of a popular character? This does happen with A-list characters like Wolverine and Batman and Spider-Man, but if a sort of a character that pops up that you say, oh, well, Sabretooth should also sell well, or, Multiple Man, because you're going to want to get more than one. Well, if you increase the quota of another character, then you have to lower the quota of another figure in that case pack, which is why only the A-list characters get higher quotas. Because just because you have a character that you think people are going to buy more of, like multiple man, because there's multiple men, well, it doesn't mean retailers are going to suddenly increase their orders. They're still ordering the standard amount, and you have to fill that with an assortment. And if you overproduce too many characters, well, that's what happens when you have clearance sales and when product doesn't sell, which is why it's really only safe to overproduce or double produce, if you will, 2 in a case pack, a character that is guaranteed to sell huge to kids. In that case, Wolverine. Trying to adjust to make more multiple men's, it throws off the MOQ. Because now you've got another figure in that case pack that has to go below the MOQ in order to give more quota to, if you will, multiple man, who really isn't going to sell that well outside the collector base. And that's the problem, because once you start trying to adjust it that way, everything goes haywire. Because you suddenly have figures in the assortment that are now under MOQ, which means they have to get recosted and have premium pricing. It throws off the cost of the entire assortment, and it just doesn't work. It's way too much work. It's so much easier just to have everyone ship 1 per case, except for the A-lister, who you know you can sell more of. It's basically like cutting your losses. A toy company doesn't want to wind up with stock on clearance because it hurts the brand, it hurts the retailer, it hurts the IP, it hurts the manufacturer. So the better choice is to have fewer than the market can support than to even have a little more. It's better because it's an inventory issue. And keeping inventory is extremely expensive. And when you have a character that doesn't sell and you wind up with a lot of inventory of that character, well, you have to pay to store that stock. And if you have to discount it and sell it in a wacky creative sale, you're losing money on that too. So while collectors are great because they bring publicity, enthusiasm, and sort of spread the news about toy lines and IP, they sort of act as advertising, free advertising for toy companies, it's not a big enough community that can truly support the minimum orders that vendors require. So I hope this perspective kind of helped. I know I can't exactly go into production numbers, but using all the information that is publicly available and putting it together one piece at a time, I think we've got a good idea. Please share this video with others if you feel it would be helpful and informative. Any information you have, or if you want to follow up to this video, let me know in the comments below. I always appreciate hearing from everyone, and thanks as always for watching.